Here we go. Hello and welcome to the War on Dad Bods podcast. Here's the question, fellas. How does the discipline of an athlete translate to business and life success? Listen today as we talk with Don Yoakum. Don is a three-time national champion, member of the U.S. Olympic team, and world champion windsurfing. Don built 10 successful real estate brokerages from the ground up. One became the most profitable in the 935 office franchise system. Don knows the business of real estate. Don is a guy I've learned a lot from. Don Yoakum, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Matt. You're too kind.
I see your background there. You got a fireplace behind you. You got some snow. What's going on?
Yeah, well, notice those flames, they're not flickering. That's an image of the type of home that I'd like, which is a beautiful mountain home overlooking a lake. That being said, I happen to be actually I'm not suffering. I am on Oahu in Hawaii. Uh, Other than it is a little toasty here, and so got the fan going to keep things cool. But
Nice.
thanks for asking.
Well, thanks for joining us anyway. I want to get a bit about your story, what you do, what attracted you to your career, what got you into your profession. Can you tell us that quick bio?
Well, from early days, my dad got me into athletics. He himself was quite an impressive athlete, two-time national archery champion, and I would say I would hearken back maybe to an experience. I was actually involved in the first triathlon it was called the Epi's Great Race in Sacramento. This was more than 40 years ago. In fact, I hate to admit it, but it might have been close to 50. At any rate, what happened was I did the running leg in a triathlon, in this triathlon. And as I was coming to the finish line, I proceeded to projectile vomit and but didn't break a stride. And my dad, uh, after the race, he was like, "Wow, that was quite a scene." And he told me later that that was one of his first memories where he goes, "This kid's different. There's something going on here that isn't quite
Some
normal."
some people quit when they puke, at least slow down a little bit.
Yeah, well, I that was a detail. That was an inconvenience, right?
Yeah.
And anyway, it was what's funny is sometimes the things that are the most uncomfortable in the moment tend to be the most charming or fond memories. Of course, I have a fond memory of my dad thinking that I was special, right? And it was worth the vomiting up my Cheerio breakfast. Sorry for the TMI, but anyway, yeah. So yeah, but I got into athletics, and I like a lot of kids. I did all the normal sports: baseball, football, basketball, track, and and I was a good athlete, but I would not say I was exceptional. I mean, I was a starter and all that. I will say in eighth grade, I do recall the team nominated me as the most inspirational player on the team, and I can remember an occasion we played linebacker, and remember we're eighth grades. I probably all of about 105, 110 pounds, and this guy came running. It was a running back, fullback, and he's like 6'2", 180 pounds, which, when you're 110, that's like a monster running at you. And I took this guy straight on, and we went down, but we went down backwards.
Mm.
Anyway, so I was pretty fearless, and I think perhaps my team appreciated that. And this guy literally ran me over because I didn't let go. He had to come down with me.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, it was fun. The what But at 14 years old, I got into windsurfing. My dad owned a windsurfing franchise dealership, and it was interesting because in life we tend to have these things that we do well pretty naturally. And for me, windsurfing was one of those things. So whereas I was a good athlete, maybe even above average, I became a world-class windsurfer. And in fact, I won my first race 1 week into it, novice race, mind you. Okay. But um, I remember my dad asking me, well, how did you know to start there? And I, it was just, I don't know. I just thought, well, that was the appropriate place to be. And I ended up winning that race. And 1 month later, I won an expert race. And then the next year, we lived in Sacramento, California, which is a little suburb. And I go, hey, I gotta go compete in the Bay Area if I want to continue to grow. And I did that. And after spending the summer in San Francisco Bay Area, I then, well, I guess I was 16 then, and I went to my dad and said that, hey, if I'm going to take this up to the next notch, I'm going to have to train in the winter. All the best people are training in Florida. So I persuaded him to let me finish high school in Fort Lauderdale and made plans to go out and live there so I could train.
You moved all the way all across the entire country just to get better at windsurfing.
That's right. Yeah. And that's exactly what I did. And there were, as life would have it, things don't always go as you expect them to. I went over there. One of the reasons why my dad consented to it was because I was going with someone older than me. I think he was 23. Jacques Deo is his name, and wonderful person, still very close friends today. And he had agreed to sort of chaperone me. And we we got out there, and he was with his girlfriend, and apparently they went out ahead of me, and the guy he was renting from was very religious, so they had to pretend they were married. And so when I got there, he's like, Don, gosh, I'm so sorry, but you're not going to be able to stay with us, right? Because they were having to present that they were married to this landlord because the guy lived in a separate property
Mm.
next door, so he was watching everything, right? So I ended up having to live just off kind of Skid Row in Fort Lauderdale at that time, which would have been 81. It was a little rough, and rough enough that I actually slept with a butcher knife under my pillow at night. And I had to work to support myself. My dad did send me $150 a month, but other than that, I provided for myself, and
And this
it
is
was
you're
it was
16?
interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but anyway, what came from that was by 18, I was able to become a national champion and a member of the United States Olympic training team. And so it worked, it was pretty exciting. And I got to travel the world and see and meet a lot of really interesting people. And it was just a magnificent experience. And the kind of the pretext for our conversation today was, well, how did the disciplines of becoming an athlete then translate into business and life? And, it is what you find is that, there's a lot of people that will show up once in a while. There are less that will show up every day. And then there are even less that will show up every day and do the work that needs to be done. And the more disciplined that you're willing to be, the less competition that you'll have naturally. And then if you can align that activity with something where you have some unique ability, like I did with windsurfing,
Yeah.
then you can progress at a rate that others are not. And I find that the competition sort of just eliminates themselves. And it's not that you're so great, it's just that everybody else just sort of falls away in the process.
And that's like, it seems so easy, but it actually doesn't happen that much. Simply consistently showing up
100%.
in alignment with some of your skills and some of your talents.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes when I've coached people, I've asked them to imagine a piece of paper in the hot sun laying on the pavement and you holding a magnifying glass over it. And if you hold that magnifying glass and you just kind of move it around on the paper, it'll warm the paper for sure, but it won't do anything visibly to it. And that's, that's being consistent, but not focused, right? And then what a lot of people will do is they'll actually take the magnifying glass off the picture that's chasing two rabbits through a field. And of course, the paper cools off. Well, the magnifying glass is off on some other piece of paper or whatever, right? But if you just hold that magnifying glass just still in the hot sun long enough, it will burn a hole right through that piece of paper, right? So it did not require any special skill to achieve, we'll call success, burning a hole through the piece of paper. It just required not moving around and chasing two rabbits through a field.
I think that's a great point. So show up every day in alignment with where you're gifted and be patient with focus.
Yeah, and realize, life is not a perfect trajectory. As you know, I don't know if you can see that, but I'm wearing a, I'm wearing a elbow pad, which I should have been wearing a little over 2 weeks ago when I fell on my mountain bike, and I'm doing compression and ice and elevation to my elbow because I had an injury there. I burst my bursa. But the the thing is that um, oh gosh, what the point I wanted to make there is that um, help me out, Matt. What was I saying there?
We were talking about the alignment of showing up every day, doing the work with your gifted ability, with focused patience, and that's how you get to the Olympics. That's the Olympic formula.
Yeah, well, and oh, I know what it was. I It's not quite so easy. And the point that I wanted to make when I lost my train of thought there is that life's not a perfect trajectory, man. You're going to have setbacks. Like I had this accident a couple weeks ago. On one of the most beautiful rides I do, but I've not been able to ride much because of that. So that was a setback, right? And the question is, how will you respond to that, right? And I will tell you that in my earlier years, I would go at things with great vigor, and as would be inevitable, I would hit a plateau. And when you're young and impatient, I would take that as, oh, well, maybe I'm not supposed to do this. So that's really an important question is that plateau because that's a natural part of the process
Yeah.
and it's time for you to reflect and refine? Or am I pursuing, do I have the ladder up against the wrong wall?
Yes. Yes. That's a
Okay.
huge question.
Right. And I think maybe too often I would go on another path just because I had hit a plateau or I had had a setback, right? Just because, I couldn't get my foot out of the pedal and I fell on my elbow doesn't mean I should give up mountain biking, for heaven's sake,
Yeah.
right? So I think people sometimes don't take the time to reflect and ask, okay, well, I'll never forget one time I was going for my diving certification in Monterey, California, and it was a sunny day, but it was quite cold and windy. And I'm sitting next to this lady, and for whatever reason, we had a bunch of delays, and we were all really tired and hungry and cold. And she's like, I've had it with this, and I just said, well, what was it? What was that prompted you to get your certification? And she goes, oh, well, I want to take this trip to Tahiti and I want to do this studying and so forth. I, um, and I, my point is, the moment she started talking about the why, she's back in that water and she finished that certification and she got certified. Okay. And so sometimes in those moments of, am I going to continue on or not? It makes sense to kind of reflect and ask, well, why was it that I started this in the first place? Like, you're calling war on dad bods, and when someone's wondering whether or not they should go to the gym or set that uh, second piece of carbohydrate down, maybe they should be asking, well, what was it about this goal? Why did I, you know, engage with Matt to have him whip me into shape?
Yeah.
Right. And, maybe they got a trip to Tahiti planned and they want to be looking bathing suit fit. I don't know, right. But anyway, I find that it does help in those moments of weakness to reflect on what the genesis of that
Yeah. So that's kind of
motivation was.
that's the core. One of the big questions I ask is, have you ever broken through a frustrating situation and eventually found success? And it sounds like tapping in to the why, the emotional energy, the inspiration, reminding yourself. Maybe it's trekking through boredom or you hit a plateau or whatever, but reconnecting with that why. Well, we've got the arm right now. Is there another specific frustrating situation that you ever broke through?
Oh gosh, so many. But I would say, as I think about my career, probably the most extreme example that I could give you was that I had built, as you know, 10 Keller Williams offices from the ground up successfully, one of which became their most profitable franchise, right? But I also had invested in some additional franchises and I was a principal partner in those and overseeing them. And lo and behold, the crash came, the crash of 2008, the great financial crisis. And I ended up having an interest in offices that were all across the country. I was in California, they were in Colorado, and Texas, and
Very,
Florida, and
very,
Virginia.
very unfortunate timing.
Yeah, yeah, right. Which is another lesson of life, by the way, but we can get there in a second. The the thing though was when the crash hit, there were times when, I was that portfolio, we were losing over $250,000 a month. Uh, and so a lot of pressure, right? And what I learned in that process was that there's a difference between an employee and an owner that has skin in the game. And when you have an employee, what they do is they call you from Florida and say, "Hey, Don, send 15,000 so we can make payroll or pay the lease or something," right? When you have a partner, I found, and they have skin in the game, suddenly they're not calling for 15,000, they're calling for five and then two and then none. Because when they're calling you for money, they're having to reach into their own pocket. So one of the lessons that I learned and a promise that I made to my wife in reflection of that experience was that I'd never own a business long distance where I didn't have a partner that had equal skin in the game to me. I did turn around those market centers. I mean, we sold six and we uh, below our basis and we closed five, but we turned around the rest of that portfolio and got it to profitability. But it was because I placed a partner in each of those local market centers. And of course, they had the interest and aptitude to be able to turn it around even in that environment, which was quite impressive, actually.
Yeah.
So my lesson there is that big isn't always better. And if you're going to scale something, make sure you have a model that can weather good times and bad.
All right. So yeah, so when people don't own the business and they're employees, they're just not going to work as hard as you're going to work. They're not going to care as much. They're not going to solve problems without without really being involved in it and having more at stake. They need skin in the game. Um, so with the Olympic experience, the athletic experience, and all the business experience, you may have sort of answered this. Is there anything that someone with only your experience could know, having gone through all that?
Well, I don't know if it's something that just I could know, but something that I believe that all the people that rise to, we'll call it world-class status of anything, could be windsurfing, could be badminton, it could be crochet, is that they they know, see, and understand things that other people do not. They say that a world-class baseball player can literally see the threads on the ball coming at them at 85, 90 miles an hour. Okay. If I'm standing in that batter's box, I'm thinking, I just don't want that ball to hit me.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. But these guys are observing. Well, first of all, they've done their homework on the pitcher and they know the probabilities of what kind of pitch that pitcher is likely to throw based on where they are in the game, where they are in the count, how many pitches that pitcher has thrown that particular day,
Hmm.
how it's going for them, and when their arm does get tired, where they, kind of where they go to that point, and then also if I'm a right or a left-handed hitter, and what is their tendency to do to that, and then they also know. There's a funny story about Andre Agassi playing Boris Becker in Wimbledon, and Boris Becker was famous for this just incredibly powerful serve. And what happened was is that he had a tick. And what he would do in his service motion is when he was going to serve to the outside, he would put his tongue to the outside of his
Oh,
mouth. And Andre Agassi picked up on it. And so what happened was is that he was able, and Andre Agassi was a world class service returner under normal circumstances. But when he knows where the serve is going to likely be,
yeah.
of course that gave him an advantage. And Boris Becker, could could not believe how Andre was returning service, but it was because Andre was seeing things that no one else was seeing.
Yeah. Well, can this equate to having been a part of so many different real estate brokers and seeing so many homes be sold and just time after time after time? What's something that like that like just the average person who's buying or selling a home like wouldn't be able to see so easily?
Well, little things like, let's say that someone is investing in real estate. Okay, there's a there's a rule called the rule of 72, and what that rule says is that you take your rate of return, divide it into 72, and whatever that is, let's say if it's 8 is your return, 72 divided by 8 will be 9. So you would have an asset double in value in that case in 9 years if it's appreciated at 8% per year. And so when you understand the law of compounding, which is kind of the rule of 72 is an easy way to do that, then you begin to think about, well, gee, if this compounding thing works and I can get a particular rate of return, I could very accurately predict the wealth that I could create, and so obviously you want to get as great a return as possible, but sometimes there's a risk reward quotient, so it does need to be balanced, right? 8% right now, by the way, happens to be quite a good return. And but let's just say that that's what it is, right? And so if I'm working with a client and they are an investor and they tell me they want to achieve a certain amount of net worth by a certain date and time, so then we'll look at where they are today. Well, let's say they own one piece of real estate that's $500,000. And if that property appreciates at 8%, like I just said, 9 years from now, it will be worth a million. That's the way compounding works. Okay. But if that investor takes that $500,000 property and then leverages it into $1 million worth of real estate, not to make it go negative cash flow, but to increase the tax benefits, but also to increase the appreciation base, and it goes up at 8%. In 9 years, instead of increase of 500,000, it's going to increase by a million.
9 years,
So
8% rate equals 72.
yeah, yeah. And if it was a 6% appreciation, take 72 divided by 6, it's 12 years. 12 years to double the asset in value.
Yeah.
Okay. If it was 7.2% appreciation, it would take 10 years, right? So you always are dividing it into.
The
Anyway, the point,
percentage on the years will give you 72, and that gives you a double.
yeah, yeah. So it's not that that's rocket science, right? But it's just most people don't think of compounding in those terms,
Yeah.
right? And, but again, going back to the discipline of showing up every day, in order to take advantage of discipline in life like that in investing, you have to be in the market,
Yeah.
right? The moment that you pull out of that market, stop showing up to the gym, that compounding takes that stops taking effect, right?
So speaking of the gym, you've been healthy your entire life. I don't think you've ever been overweight or unhealthy. You've always been training, always been exercising with the body of an Olympian. What do you think are one or two of the simplest things people can do to make their health better? Like, what's the low-hanging fruit, or just what's the simplest stuff that most people aren't doing that they could do? What comes to mind when I ask you that question?
Gosh, I think it's habits. It's the simple little habits. And a fantastic book on this subject would be Atomic Habits by James Clear. And, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of studies, and I'm sure you know this better than me, but the people that plan their workout routines in the morning have a greater propensity to get them done. But what I find is that I have a great morning when I have a great evening before that. So meaning that I get up at 5:15, which is my time to get up when I go to bed on time,
Yeah.
right? So if I make a habit of doing my evening routine, then that sets me up for success in my morning routine. And at 5:15, I do that. I get my little lemon water, and then I do my Duolingo. I do a little bit of reading, and then I'll start into my day. And usually that will be some type of exercise. If I have a busy week of work, that might just mean a little gym workout. If I've got more time, I'll actually go out on a nice ride or something. In the wintertime, I've got my little routine in the morning, bike ride go for my bike ride, do that necessary work thing, and then go sailing in the afternoon, right? So, I would say habit stacking is a term that James Clear uses, but it just seems like one good habit leads to another good habit and to another. And I would say also the inverse is true.
Yeah.
If I partake of a glass of wine, well then the probability of me also having a piece of chocolate after that increases exponentially.
Yeah, so like habit stacks. So I think about like for me, like it's workout, it's stretch, it's breathe, and then it's meditate, and then it's like healthy breakfast. Is there like a stack or sequence that like is your go-to that you really like to get yourself primed in the morning?
Yeah, yeah. And you gave me that breathing exercise, the 7 minute. very deliberate inhale, exhale. I love that one actually.
7 seconds,
So
7 seconds out, just 7 minutes.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so simple, but yet really calming and nice. And as I've mentioned to you in the past, even though meditation takes time, it's almost like meditation in a way sends a message to me that I'm living in an abundance of time, because I'm
Mm.
able to take the time to do these little things. So I I don't know, it has created for me a feeling of abundance and peace by meditation. I don't get into all the chanting or all this other stuff, but uh and I'm nothing against that different types of meditation, but I love that simple breathing exercise. And yeah, I have worked that in, and that's a great protocol for morning and evening, I would say.
What do you stack it with?
Yeah, well, I have, like I told you, I get up and I'll have my little lemon water, um, warm lemon water, which is great for digestion and so forth. But it's more like a ritual,
Mhm.
and the ritual then, the for my body and then for my mind, doing a little bit of learning. I noticed today I'm 2,275 consecutive days on Duolingo.
Yeah, so will you stack those together with your morning routine? That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And so, we were talking previously about how consistency is important, and Duolingo is something that I do, which I've actually grown to enjoy doing. And I have a goal of becoming fluent in Spanish. And interestingly enough, it's not an area of my life where I would say that I'm uniquely gifted. In fact,
Mm.
I would say pretty to the contrary. I'm somewhat of a slow learner when it comes to languages. But you know what? I'm not trying to win some race. My whole life I've been racing and competing and this and that. And if it takes me 3,000 days or 5,000 days or 10,000 days to finally become fluent in Spanish, that's going to be totally fine because I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm not racing against anybody else. And so, sometimes I think we also want to just give ourselves a break, man, and
With some
if we're
grace.
not, it's sort of like the curse of comparison. Hey, man, he's learning faster than me. Well, you know what? Maybe it's just more naturally gifted than you at that particular thing.
That category.
Okay. Yeah. That doesn't make you bad or wrong. So I, so I guess my message there is that we don't have to limit ourselves just to our unique ability. We can do things that just bring us pleasure or
Yeah. Sounds like
whatever.
kind of evolve into that thinking. Is there anything in the last, let's say the last year, is there anything that you've changed your mind about?
Yes. Yeah. The thing I'm really onto right now is being different, not better.
Being different,
And
not better.
yes. And so remember, most of my life, I've shown up as a competitor. So when you compete, you're entering a field of competition that's already been established. And then it's your job to then rise up through those ranks.
Yeah. That's
Well,
it.
I'm here to tell you that is a bloody battle, man. And I don't care how damn good you are, you're going to meet someone better. Okay. And uh, being better is a business of margins, and the margins are so tight that it is hardly worth doing. And also, by the way, if you're doing something that's already been established, are you really needed anyway?
Yeah.
In other words,
Problem's
if
already
the
solved.
market, yeah, someone's already doing that. You think you might be able to do it better, but really, you'll see. I'm suggesting that that actually might be a pretty tall order. Okay. But if you actually will create an offering that is different, that solves a real problem, great book on this subject called The 22 Laws of Category Design
Oh,
by
well.
Christopher Lochhead and a few others. That was uh, The 22 Laws of Category Design by Christopher Lochhead. Fantastic book. Right now, I just finished yesterday on the plane reading The Existing Market Trap. And you know what happens is that people will look at something. As a matter of fact, just before meeting with you, I was meeting with a gentleman, fantastic agent, and he is looking at possibly building a property management company.
Mm.
And I I'm discouraging him from doing that, right? Because it's a very low margin business. People are already doing it. And he's like, well, I know I could do it better. I'm like, okay, but is that worth your while to be better?
Yeah.
Okay,
Um, yeah.
go
So
ahead.
I really like that idea of be different, not better, because people believe that they got to be better. But to me, it's always like if you just be yourself as much as possible, it's inevitably going to be very different. So, like, how do you find who you are with your unique talents and put yourself in that situation and be the best you, which is going to be very different if you're authentic.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, no one can be the best you but you,
yeah.
right? And so you've got that going for you. There's only one of you. Thank goodness in your case.
Yeah.
So what that was supposed to be a joke. The point is that we we kind of know, like I know that I had a unique ability for windsurfing, not so much for Spanish.
Hmm.
Okay. So if I were trying to be a linguist, an interpreter, a teacher of Spanish, I'm probably got my ladder up against the wrong wall. Okay. Because that isn't my unique ability. Right. Okay. So the way that you know you have a unique ability is that when you're doing it, you lose track of time.
Yeah.
When you're doing it, you accelerate at a rate which is uncommon. And I think I heard a guy say, do what is fun for you and work for others.
Yeah. It's easy to get your 10,000 hours when you're doing something that you like.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. So, and also, I think it was Aristotle's mom or grandma that said to him, son, if you want to sell big ships, you got to go where the water's deep.
Hmm.
Okay. So you want to make sure that you align your unique ability also with an opportunity that can afford you a return that is commensurate with your goals, objectives, and so forth. Right. So there, that comes from sometimes asking a better question,
All right.
which is,
Well, go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was going to say a great book on that is 10x versus 2x by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Don Sullivan. And that is sometimes we will engage in an assortment of activities, and it's interesting that the things that keep us busy are also probably those things that keep us from excelling at the highest possible level.
Yeah. Things that keep us busy. Um, be different, not better. I think people literally believe they have to be better and that could be holding them back. Are there any other limiting beliefs, just common limiting beliefs that hold people back? Yeah, we took a quick break there, but I wanted to get back into it here. What are the most common limiting beliefs that hold people back?
Not asking the appropriate questions. And I think sometimes people will say, well, why me? Why would I be so special to be able to have such an amazing physique or an incredible spouse or a very successful business? And I would just say, why not you? Right? And the thing though is that most people don't have the courage to ask the questions that would then cause them to take the action to get what they want in life. Right? And because if you decide if you're going to stake a claim on something, well, guess what? It's going to take work. And then you're going to then start having to ask and answer the questions of what it's going to take to achieve your objective. And it's easier for most people to simply say, I could have done it if I would have just done this or that, than actually doing the work. Because what's hard is when you actually fully commit to something and you give 100% or as close to 100% as you possibly can, and you fail, which you often will do, by the way, then you have to accept responsibility that maybe you just aren't good enough. Okay. And the thing of it is, though, is I would say most of us, myself included, remember I said earlier in our conversation that I would reach plateaus and I would go, well, geez, well, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe this isn't my unique ability. Maybe I'm not destined to be a national world champion, Olympian, whatever. Okay. And I would say more often it was because I wasn't asking the questions. And I'll take you back to 2008 again. That great financial crisis in real estate was quite a learning experience for me. And there were weeks and days and moments where I just became completely overwhelmed. And I literally would get up from my chair. I happened to be in a building that had a beautiful view of the Colorado mountains, and I would go walk to the window and I would take a few breaths. I didn't have your breathing exercise at that time, but that would have been handy. And I knew there were 100 things I couldn't do where I was just stymied for whatever reason. But the question I would ask myself is, well, what can I do? And you know something? I never had a response to that that was nothing. I have, whenever I have asked that question, I've always been able to come up with something.
So, so,
Okay. You know,
so some people believe there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do, and they throw their hands up and they quit.
yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to say, I'm going to just call bull on that.
Yeah.
You know, I had a particular moment in time when it was 1995 and I was struggling in my life and wasn't feeling good about myself. And I was broke. You know, I had lost a bunch of money and a significant relationship. And I just thought, you know what? I can pick up litter. So what I would do, I wasn't one of those guys with an orange vest and a little clamper on the side of the highway,
Well, there's
right?
nothing I can do. I feel horrible. You know what I can do? I can pick up litter.
Yeah. I I started picking up litter like when I would go into a store, walking from my car. Now I'm not walking around the parking lot picking up trash, okay? But if I could see a piece of litter in my general direction, I would just sort of pick it up, and then when I got close to the door, there'd be a trash bin there, and I'd throw it in the bin and go. Okay, well, that very small act got me back on the rail in realizing, you know what? I screwed up, but I'm actually not such a bad guy. And I'm doing some good in the world. And by the way, if everybody showed up in life like I did and picked up litter on their way to and from the things that they were doing in their course of the day, we would have no litter on this planet.
Mhm.
Okay. So that was a stepping stone that was well within my capabilities, well within anyone's capabilities
Yeah.
that they can do to make a positive impact. And and it's kind of like James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits, it becomes a habit stacking. Okay, well, once I got the litter thing down, well, what can I do now? Okay, well, maybe once I get to the door, maybe I wait and I just open the door for somebody. I make a random act of kindness. How about that?
Yeah.
Right?
There's always something you can do.
Yeah. And then maybe when I see somebody that's got a beautiful smile, I tell them so. Right?
Yeah.
And and maybe that makes their day. Maybe, like, do you think that when people saw me walking into the store that they knew I was suffering from a state of depression, you know, borderline suicidal? Okay. Probably not. Okay. So you don't know what people are going through in their lives, right? So if you can do a random act of kindness and put a little light on somebody's day and be obviously genuine,
Mhm.
if the guy has a crappy smile and he's frowning, don't say you have a beautiful smile, but call it out if it's appropriate.
Um, so with your experience and gosh, you dropped like 10 books already. Um, think about like mentors and people that you've worked with. What's the best advice you've ever received? Does anything come to mind when I ask that question?
Hmm. Well, the first one that came to mind was one of my mentors, and I've had so many mentors in my life for which I'm incredibly grateful, is the Ken Winter. He's I was a one-time world champion. He's like nine-time world champion, and he's a little older than me. And when I uh, abandoned my Olympic campaign and became professional, I was on the same. I was sponsored by the same company as him, and he would develop this leading edge equipment. He would let me basically use it as well, kind of his hand me down, so to speak. And I learned so much, not just from being able to use equipment that he was developing, but also just his discipline of showing up, his commitment to never ending progress. And one day he and I were playing backgammon rather, and I was just learning the game, and he was beating me, even though it's a game of luck. There's strategy involved, of course, and he just kind of looks over at me and he says, Don, I'm never going to let you win. And that always has resonated with me. And I have beaten Ken, by the way, very infrequently, incidentally. But it's because I earned it. Okay. He didn't just give it to me. So, in life, different people are going to give you different things. And what Ken taught me was to just give everything I possibly could give to be the best that I could be and know that there that's what it's going to take to win. I think in our society today, we've got participation trophies and all this stuff, right? And I'm glad that those kids are out there doing those things. But if you know that, you know, um, that they're winning
Mm.
by just showing up, uh, I think you're setting them up for a dose of reality that is going to be hard for them later because um, you're going to be expected in life to produce results. And
Always do
again,
your best.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And so, and that was, I guess that was what the free ride, um, life also is a little cruel, man. Have you seen the movie Private Ryan?
Oh yeah.
There's a moment where those two guys are in a fight upstairs, and the guy puts the knife through the guy's chest. Okay, and that moment has pierced my soul in a way, realizing how brutal life can actually be. Because he begged, for mercy in that moment, and he didn't receive it, right? I mean, the guy did end up killing him, and that was such a brutal thing. And yet, what you need to understand is that there's a perfect accounting in life, and if you try to cut corners, it's going to be accounted for. Okay, there's no free ride, man.
There's no free ride.
And yeah.
Always do your best. There's no free ride. Is there any advice that you received that like is the worst advice you've ever heard? Like what's like something that just like triggers you, like the worst advice you've ever heard? You hear people say it and you just like totally disagree.
Gosh, I'll have to think about that for a second because I feel like I've often gotten so much great advice.
To me, it's
The
like traditional beliefs that like are no longer great for the context that we live in. Or for me, like I didn't agree with a lot of the stuff I learned in school, in nutrition and in the hospital with like how they're trying to solve problems and they don't actually treat the root cause. Based off your experience, any really bad advice?
Yes, yeah, yeah. Okay, I get you. You you gave it to me by mentioning school,
Hmm.
and what it is that in school we're taught to be well-rounded, to have a basic knowledge of a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And what I'm here to tell you is that is a recipe for mediocrity.
Wow.
Okay.
Jack
Okay.
of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think that there is value in having a basic knowledge of things. So I'm a fan of school, by the way. I'm more a fan of learning. But once you have a basic foundation and you have done enough studying to understand where your strengths and weaknesses are, man, I would say hone in on your strength and take that to the moon,
Hmm.
right? Do not continue trying to be good at many things. Jim Collins in the book Good to Great said good is actually the enemy of great,
Yeah.
right? And so, yeah, go for greatness. And what is hard about that is you're going to have to let go of so many things.
Um, so going for greatness and being great, this is one of my favorite questions I like to ask people. What is it that inspires you, that motivates you, that you use as your personal fuel to attack the day and your why, your big fuel? What do you use?
To be able to make a difference, I want to, I know that I'm a mortal. I know that I'm going to be gone one day. And I would like to believe that the influence I had on others would perpetuate in some positive way, that I might be able to impact the trajectory of somebody's life.
Hmm.
And uh, maybe it's a little better, happier, healthier for them because they came into contact with me. It's because, we're just one person. And while we can do a lot in our lifetime, it is just pales in comparison to what we could do by influencing others, because that can have a ripple effect that can just continue to compound, like we were talking about, in a way that you could never imagine. I mean, think about Mother Teresa, for example, just this little woman that decided to be of service, and I would say inspired millions of people to be of service, right? Her acts. And so, I'm no Mother Teresa, that's for sure. But if there's little things that I could do that would influence the trajectory of other people, that's the person I want to be.
There's nothing like receiving that text message when someone says, "Thank you, something you did impacted my life." I mean, that's a that'll change your week.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I know, I'm sure, I know I have sent you those messages when you have given me a word that inspired me
Oh,
or
you actually wrote me a
lifted
letter.
my day.
It's hanging up on my gym. I read it all the time. It makes me feel great.
Oh, wow. I love that. It's funny, the people don't realize how these little things. I remember going into this guy's office one day that I had coached like 10 years ago, and a card I had sent him was sitting on his shelf, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah,
Okay, so just you don't know, when that little thing that you do is going to lift somebody and make a difference in their life. I mean, or um, inspire them to go for whatever it is that they want to go for.
yeah.
Which, by the way, one of the best questions that I've ever heard was a guy says, "Well, what are you excited about now, man?"
Mm, yeah.
Right?
That'll, that'll,
And
that'll open up some parts of your brain. What are you excited about now?
yeah, and what can I do to help make that possible?
Hmm,
Who can I introduce you to
that's great.
that could help you in the achievement of that objective? And that's another thing, by the way. I'm planning to write a book, and I'm um, I'm in an area where one of my favorite authors. I was telling you about the 22 categories of the 22 laws of category design by Christopher Lochhead. Is I um, I know somebody that knows him, right? Guy that I used to mastermind back in the day, and Tim Rohn is his name. And I thought, man, I'm going to reach out to Tim, and I'm going to see if he'll introduce me to Christopher Lochhead, right? 5-time best-selling author and 3-time CMO of publicly traded tech companies, literally the godfather of category design, right? So somebody that I admire, look up to. Anyway, I reach out to Tim. Of course, Tim's excited to hear from me, and we've had a lot of good times together. And he's like, "Yeah, absolutely." So he goes, "Why don't you send me a text about why you want to meet Christopher, and I'll pass it along to him." And I did, and he did. And guess what? Last week I had an hour and 15-minute call with Christopher Lochhead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was so exciting to me and inspire, and just it was a little, it was a little bit intimidating because you're reaching out to somebody you maybe idolize a little bit, and you don't want to. You imagine, am I going to be able to hold this guy's attention? Is he going to want to just shoo me off the phone or whatever? We ended up having an hour and 15-minute conversation, for which I'm incredibly grateful. And we've had many text exchanges since that time. But let me tell you, man, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out how to add value to Christopher Lochhead's life, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go, I just finished his book yesterday, the new one he just released, which is the existing market trap. And I'm going to go put a review up, right? It's a small thing, but it's something. right? And then I have some ideas that he could use to fur further his messaging about category design. So I'm going to make sure that I give him to him. I'm going to go read his book again though first,
Yeah.
so that I have feel like I have an intimate understanding of it. But anyway, fun things to do.
Well, switching gears here, I want to ask you about AI because that's coming. It's coming across all industries. In your business, well, tell us a bit about your business, and then tell us how you incorporate AI in the way you do business.
Yeah, gosh, I'm studying it every day. I'm actually in a 90-day course right now for AI,
Oh, wow.
and I'm taking it real seriously. And it's funny, we were talking about that just following the conversation with Christopher Lockhead because he's he's currently advising 12 AI first startups in Silicon Valley that are venture backed.
Oh,
Okay, so he's very much in the know with what's happening now and where things are going to go. And in real estate, he says, Don, you probably got 2 years, 2 years until your industry completely changes,
wow.
right? And because we were talking about, because I have a tech company, Pro Insight, that is providing relational tech. Our industry is really predominantly, well, the average age is over 55 years old. There's something like 60% of the business is done by people 55 years or older. I mean, it's crazy. Um, anyway, the point is that these guys are not necessarily, they didn't grow up with tech. So it's coming on them. And so what we're doing is we're using AI to develop a category called relational tech.
Yeah.
And relational tech is taking a relationship based service professional, empowering them with AI to be able to deliver an enhanced experience to the consumer. And so
Well, more
it
specifically,
was,
how does that work in real estate?
yeah, well, for example, in real estate, there are 6 things that we clamor for: capital appreciation, cash flow, tax savings, ease of investment, legacy planning, or perhaps just taking care of our property. So we all want all 6 of these things, right?
Yeah.
But you and I, you're younger than me. You might be aspiring more to capital accumulation than cash flow or tax savings like I might, right? Because of where I am in my career. The point is that while we all want all 6 of these things, we might have a different priority order. Well, what AI can do and what we're doing with our tool is then going in and looking at a person's portfolio and then looking at it with the context of their goals and priorities and then making suggestions based on that. So you're taking this relationship based advisor and turning them into a modern day advisor because of the power of AI. Because that AI tool doesn't get tired, doesn't need to sleep. You can train it to be a world class advisor, and it is tireless. It can go look at your 500-person database and those 605 properties and looking at the characteristics of each one and identify the one that should be a seller finance installment sale versus the one that should be a 1031 exchange, etc. So the point is that AI can really give you the ability to uh, play to your strength. If you're a relationship based agent, you don't want to use tech to start treating people efficiently. You want to use tech so that you can be effective in your service to that client, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because in the early days of tech, you practically had to be a programmer to use it. And it's progressively become easier and easier to use tech. Now we can literally just talk to it. You know, I was at a mastermind in Dallas the other day, and I gave the founder of the EXP an idea, Glenn Sanford, and it was about if we were going to be attracting someone, how could we figure out who would be the best person to co-sponsor with them so that we have a better chance of getting that recruit and having them have a better experience with our company. And so I went through this process of having us each create a profile with our unique gifts and abilities. And so then the AI would look at the recruit and what their goals were, and then look at the unique abilities of all the people in the company, and then match up and start making recommendations and say, okay, Matt, if you want to sponsor this person, you should reach out to Don Yoakum because he was a KW agent like this guy, and they have something in common there, and he has done this and such. And the point is that they can scan 88,000 agents and the unique ability of each and every one of them to give you the top three recommendations. It's insane what it can do, right?
Yeah.
And so now that recruit that you're clamoring for is not only going to get you, but you're going to partner with the best guy of 88,000 to serve and support that new recruit at the company, right? Well, I gave this idea to him at 10 in the morning. He went to his hotel. And when I say I gave it to Glenn, he goes, hey, I want you to talk to Seth, our CTO. So um, he connected me. I went out in the hallway. I spent 15 minutes with Seth, and I gave him the whole idea of how to orchestrate this, right? How I would like to see it done. Seth goes to his hotel room. We're in a hotel. He does 22 prompts with a site called Lovable.
Yeah.
He creates a site and presents it to 400 of us that afternoon, fully working operational with the concept that I had given Glenn that morning. That's the power of AI.
Wow.
So we are going to be able to do crazy stuff, man. And I know people are scared of it. I'm scared of it too. Okay. But courage is not the absence of fear. It's being willing to proceed in the presence of it, right?
Yeah.
So it's okay that you have these trepidations about where our society is going. You're human, man. Okay, but don't let it paralyze you. Ask the better question. Okay, it's a double-edged sword. This can be a friend or a foe. How can I use AI to better serve my client? Right? Like when you've been coaching me, you've been using AI to ask it questions that might give me some insight on some things. And
I think it's a good
it
brainstormer. It'll give you, formats. It'll give you ideas. It'll give you just structure sometimes, but really just something that you never think of. And when you get it to ask questions and prompt the human mind's creativity, you're prompting human creativity, which I think is great.
it's amazing, and as I told you, I'm going through a course right now, but I've decided I've made a discipline of engaging with AI every day from the rest of my life. Okay. And I, yesterday on my flight, I was prompting ChatGPT because I'm working on category design for Pro Insight. And it was, I was going forth with it a half a dozen times to just refine my thinking process, right? And so, yeah, it's a fascinating time, the tools that we have, and I hope that we'll take great advantage of it and do some good with it.
Well, Pro Insight is like an exciting new business. How is this helping real estate agents support their clients better?
Well, we do a couple things, but I would say the biggest one is we're taking these baby boomers who are controlling the majority of the business, and we're tech empowering them. We're giving them what we call relational tech, and we're giving them insight into serving their clients that really only AI has the ability to do, right? Because if you've got 500 clients with 605 properties, you don't have the time to go look at each and every one of those and make suggestions to those clients and serve them at the same time. So you're basically delegating the analysis of what would best serve that client to AI, but then you deliver it with personalized communication,
Yeah.
right? And so it is it's pretty it's going to be exciting for these baby boomer agents to empower them with these modern day tools, literally making them a modern day advisor and giving and for enabling them to give their clients advice that that might not have ever occurred to them.
Wow. Yeah, the AI can now, like, we don't have to code. We don't have to do any research. Like, we don't have to go digging for the needle in the haystack. We can just say, hey, where's the needle? Where's the opportunity? And then we can do what we do best, and that's communicate and support people.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty cool. And just dig in, start where you are, download ChatGPT, start asking it questions. By the way, do you know what the number one use case for ChatGPT is?
Oh, what is it?
Personal therapy.
Really? That's funny. I've created one project so far, and it could have been like know my business. It could have been structure my finances. It could have been something about my health. The one project I have is called Matt's Therapy. That's the only project I've created so far where I've really dug deep and got a lot of stuff out of there.
Well, it gives you solid advice and insight, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's like so personal and intimate. Sometimes you don't want to say things out loud, but you feel comfortable talking to a computer about it.
Well, even when you're coaching me, there are some things. I mean, I'm pretty forthright with you and transparent, but there might be things that I don't necessarily want to share with you because I don't want you to hold a negative image of me,
Yeah, I mean that's humanity is always there.
right? Okay, but I can go to ChatGPT and I can be fully transparent. Now, I may take what it says and come back to you and say, "Hey, Matt, what do you think about this idea?" Right? So I can have a human touch on it,
Yeah.
right? But the point is that it is a treasure trove of information if you want to use it. And I'm excited about it. I'm just really scratching the surface for the capabilities, of course, and I am fascinated with what I'm learning.
I think, I mean, every day, if people have got like a to-do list, if there's something that they're stuck on, if you've got a household problem, or I was talking to it about landscaping last week. What are my options here? Any problem that you're having, you just turn on ChatGPT and I just start talking to it. And I create a context about the situation. I talk about how I want this to look when it's solved properly. And what are my options here? How can I fix this? What do you think? And then it just saves you so much time. Now you know where to go with it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've long said that we will be judged by the quality of questions that we ask. And I'm now learning that actually being a prompt engineer is one of the most highly valued positions now, right? And you could apply that to AI, you could apply that to human relations. Just being more thoughtful about the questions that you ask people could dramatically impact your relationship with them. So, something to think about. It's they say garbage in, garbage out, right? And notice, by the way, when you ask ChatGPT a mediocre question, you get a mediocre response.
Oh, wow. Huh. I guess so. How could it go any deeper? We didn't give it anything else. All right.
It might come back to you and say, "Hey, Matt, Get your thinking cap on. Let's have a better question than that.
Yeah. All right, we can talk AI all day. I want to get into some health questions. I want to dig out what's helping you stay healthy, so I can share that with my guys. What are your your top three supplements? If you only take three supplements for the rest of your life, what are your favorite supplements? Top three.
Well, the calcium magnesium calm is a great supplement for evening. That has been a great tool for me to uh, have a more restful sleep, and also it's been great for cramp prevention when I'm exercising.
Yeah.
And then I have macro greens is a fantastic supplement for balancing my blood sugar. I have that every single morning, and sometimes when you have that can have that afternoon lull. That's a fantastic
Hmm.
supplement. It's basically crushed vegetables, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I like that as just yeah, like a refueler and getting some energy, putting something in your stomach that has no calories, by the way, and can almost suppress appetite. I like that.
yeah, and then coupling that with um, the vinegar. What is the? It's not balsamic vinegar. It's
Apple cider vinegar.
thank you, apple cider vinegar. Yeah, that also is great immune booster and so forth. So those are my top two probably. And I good old vitamin C is great as well. I before I'm taking a trip, I'll always um, take a hit of echinacea to boost my immunity as well. But
What?
and you've turned me on to something, uh, the amino acids and stuff for working out also can be pretty powerful. Uh, but yeah, that would be it. I mean, lots of things you can do, but those are the ones that I'm using day in, day out.
Nice. Good ones there. Is there a health and fitness myth that drives you crazy? Any myths out there? People are always talking about, oh, hey, have you
Well,
tried?
yeah. Well, I mean, I think the most obvious one is to think that you can exercise your way out of the calories that you consume.
Yeah. You know what's
Uh,
funny about that is you can gain a pound in a day. You can eat 6,000 calories in one day. You can gain a pound in one day. You can't really lose a pound in one. You can't burn 3,500 calories in one day. So, and even like if your goal is to maintain weight, like if you have one day where you eat a piece of cake, that means at some point you have to be at this deficit. So I think we almost have to always sort of live at like a 100, 200 calorie a day deficit. That way there will be those days where we splurge or we celebrate or whatever it is.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, it's 3,500 calories to a pound, right?
Yeah.
And so, but it is uh, the diet. The food we put in is 80% of the game, right? The exercise is probably the 20%. I mean, you can obviously increase your metabolism through exercise, but you can't outrun bad eating habits or too many carbs. Uh, I've tried, by the way, on many occasions.
Well, with the amount of cardio that you do, yeah. Well, that's my next question. If you had one exercise you could do for the rest of your life, what would it be? And it can be windsurfing, it can be swimming, it can be any exercise. What would you do?
Yeah, just riding my bicycle.
Yeah,
I,
right.
that's probably my go-to. But at some point, I would say, I mean, just going for a walk or a hike is also amazing. When I'm really on my game, I'm very conscious of going for at least two and ideally three walks a day. It Having a dog is amazing, right? Just because you want to get them out and get a little exercise, and but just having the daily habit of taking a short little walk after each meal can help you metabolize it and get you some fresh air. Take and exercise the dog. That's great. Uh, having an early dinner and then the walk, even better.
Yeah. Um,
Simple stuff.
What is your most hated exercise?
Running. I
That's
say that I
a good
run
exercise.
only if I'm being chased by a bear, but
Yeah.
probably that's because I
Then it's
am.
a bicycle then.
What's that?
Then it would a bicycle or any other vehicle that's faster than a
Yeah, I I've had I had a pretty bad mountain biking accident that resulted in two hip operations, two hip replacements, and so running's not really in the cards for me. Although I love hiking, my son and I do the Pacific Crest Trail every year for a few days anyway, and so that's a wonderful exercise. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of running, especially now that I'm aging out a little bit. It's just a little harder on the body.
What is your go-to healthy meal in general? What's your go-to healthy meal when you're short on time? One or the other there.
You know, uh, I would say you said two things there, your go-to healthy meal and then short on time. And what it brought to mind was just a slice of turkey or something, get a little protein,
Yeah.
pretty clean. And my dog likes it because I give her one piece when I take one. And so it's kind of fun. And so that's one thing. I wouldn't call that super healthy, but at least it's not bad and it's really quick. And I find that protein satiates me a little bit better for longer, so that is good. And I'm actually a pretty big fan of salads. My go-to meal at dinner would be a salad with a little chicken.
There you go. Yeah, that's good. I like that a lot. Okay. You mentioned, I don't know, like 10 books already. Which book, you only got one here, Don. Which book has influenced you the most?
Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Yeah, that book is, I think the Library of Congress claims it's one of the 10 most important books ever written, and I can see why. And there's common belief that we in life will tend to seek pleasure and avoid pain. That's kind of a Tony Robbins thing. And I do believe there's a lot of truth in that. But I think the key to happiness is really to have meaning in your life and to have a purpose and to have something that you're working towards that's meaningful to you and that might even succeed you. If one can find meaning, I think that then you can find happiness because you're going to be in the pursuit of a worthy goal.
Yeah. You can keep going if there's meaning.
Yeah. And especially if someone is having a difficult time in their life, I think it's a great book to visit. Now,
Mm,
of course, Viktor Frankl went through the concentration camp, so you can only imagine the horrors of that. And
I hadn't thought to recommend that to someone who's going through a lot. That's interesting.
yeah, just I would say just be a little bit careful because it's also kind of heavy. I mean, so you might need to step into that, but when they're ready for it, I think that it's a fantastic book to help somebody find their purpose.
All right, getting a little more optimistic here. Um, when you work out, do you have a favorite hype song? Any song that you had to put on repeat to get you pumped up to work out. What do you like?
AC/DC, Back in Black, maybe.
Oh wow. Yeah, Marcus likes Thunderstruck, so you guys can hang out and go to like an AC/DC concert or something.
The Yeah, no, I actually I'm that 80s guy, right? So a lot of my songs come from that era, but Boston Long Time is another song that I'm a big fan of,
Oh
which
yeah, yeah.
ages me a bit. But that's just a big pump up. I music is amazing. And not just music to get you pumped up, but also, music. yesterday on the flight over here, my wife and I were listening to some music together, and we had a really tearful, beautiful moment. You know, he had created a song list, and um, about, and it's funny how certain songs will anchor you to certain people,
Mm.
and there are certain songs that she and I connect around, um, and so music is a beautiful thing for sure.
Yeah, me and my wife, we connect on that Sir Mix-a-Lot song. What's it called? Never mind. Anyway, all right, before we wrap this thing up, guys, a great question to ask. What are you excited about now? And if you want the formula for Olympic success, show up every day. Show up every day, do the work, do the things that you're gifted at for longer than anyone else, and have some patience. Sit in there and have some patience. Always do your best and be different, not better. And after you eat your meal, take a walk. That'd be good. Don, before we go, can you tell us what's your current service? Who do you serve? What problem do you solve? And where can we find you?
Yeah, well, I'm building a tech company, Pro Insight. You can find that at proinsight.com. And that's where we're delivering relational tech to the agents that matter now in the real estate industry. But uh, you can find me there or just at Don at proinsight.com, and or you reach out to me, through one of the social channels, Facebook. I'm not really an Instagram guy. I guess I'm going to have to get up to speed on that, but I'm regular on Facebook. So anyway, Matt, thank you so much for having me.
Well, Don, thanks a lot. It was an honor to have you here. It was an honor to have your ear, listeners. And we'll see you next time.